Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Our event will start soon on 9:05 a.m. So I hope you guys are excited for today's event. How is everyone doing today? You guys can either turn on your mics or you can just type down on the chat box. Okay, so Wahida is doing good right now, alhamdulillah. Moderator is also doing good as well. Thank you, Tashako. So we shall start our event in another 2 minutes. Good morning and a very warm welcome. I bid to the course coordinator as well as project advisor for the 47th Journalism e-Colloquium, Madam Azrinawati Ngainon, our collaborator, participants from the Malaysian Forest Fund MFF, coordinators, beloved lecturers, fellow journalism and university peers, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ainun Jara and I will be the moderator for today's session, first episode of the 47th Journalism e-Colloquium, hosted to you by the final year journalism students of UiTM Shah Alam. Welcome to the 47th Journalism e-Colloquium. This time, we shall venture into the environmental issues with the theme, Climate Change, What is the Role of Media? Now, on behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome all participants for joining our session today. And before that, I would like to ask, how is everyone doing today? I hope everyone is in good health and in excellent condition as always. Ladies and gentlemen, now let us hear a few words from the 47th Journalism e-Colloquium project leader, Daniel Iskandar.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah and good morning to all. Greetings to the course coordinator of journalism program and faculty communication and media studies and project advisor 47 Colloquium, Puan Azinawati Ngainon. Our collaborators, Malaysia's Forest Fund, panel of speaker, Malaysian documentary filmmaker and journalist, Ms. Yih Wen, respected lecturers and to all students. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to all of you as we gather here today to attend the 47 Journalism Colloquium with the theme, The Role of Media in Environmental Sustainability, conducted by the final year journalism students. Today on episode 1, we will shed light on a topic of utmost importance, climate change. What is the role of the media? It is an honor to have such a distinguished audience present, comprising individuals who share a common concern for our planet's well-being. We live at a time where the future of our environment is under risk, requiring immediate action and shared responsibility. In this era of rapid technological advancement, the media plays an important role in shaping public opinion, driving awareness, and catalyzing change. It is through their power of storytelling, dissemination of information, and ability to capture attention that the media possesses a unique opportunity to advocate for environmental sustainability. Today, we have the privilege of discussing the critical subject, exploring how the media can act as a catalyst for positive environmental change. We will uncover the potential for media platforms to raise awareness about environmental issues, educate the masses on sustainable practices, and inspire individuals and communities to take action. Throughout the course of this event, we will hear from esteemed experts, NGOs, and also media professionals who will share their insights and experience. We aim to gain deeper understanding of how we can contribute to foster a sustainable future for the generation to come. Let us seize this occasion to engage in meaningful dialogue, exchange ideas, and develop a collective vision for the transformative power of media in environmental sustainability. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished speaker and dedicated organizing committee who have made this event possible. May our discussion today pave the way for a future where we are, with the help of the media, promote environmental sustainability, shape a world that is thriving, resilient, and also harmonious. Thank you to each and every one of you for attending this event, and let the event begin.
Hello and good morning, everyone. First and foremost, the colloquium would like to thank all of you for joining us today. We hope that this event will be informative and also engaging to all of you. The colloquium would also like to thank all of our sponsors, Deep Rock and also Floria Pucho, for their contribution in ensuring that this event goes as smoothly as planned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 47 Journalism e-Colloquium series. We are privileged to have with us a distinguished speaker, Yih Wen. Now, for your information, Ms. Wen is a respected Malaysian documentary filmmaker as well as journalist who has made significant contributions to the journalism field over the past decade. Her work has been featured on Netflix, BBC, History Channel, Crime and Investigation Network, Euronews, and also CNA. She has also received the Society of Publishers in Asia 2019 awards for her excellence and for her documentary on female circumcision. Ms. Wen is also a Pulitzer Center grantee and has earned accolades for her films Eye on the Ball and The Boys Club. Currently, she is working on a documentary about marginalized community in Malaysia, supported by Hot Dogs. Today, we are fortunate to have Ms. Wen here to share with us some of her insights and thoughts about the topic, climate change, what is the role of media? Ms. Wen's experience and expertise in the journalism field makes her an ideal guest to explore this important subject. Now, before we begin, let us give a warm welcome to Ms. Chen Yih Wen. Ms. Wen, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Right. How excited are you to join this event?
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, Ms. Wen, first of all, I would like to say it is a pleasure to have you here today. So, to start our discussion, could you share with us some of your thoughts on the role of media in supporting the climate action? Ms. Wen?
Well, thanks again for having me this morning, and hello to everyone that's just joined us. Role of media in supporting climate change. So, as media, our role is to act as a watchdog, to inform the audiences and to campaign on relevant social issues. And, having said that, in the context of the climate emergency that we are seeing now, we have a duty to shine a light on unreported stories by focusing on the facts and disseminating clear information to the public, especially in this day and age where we are bombarded with endless content on social media. It's crucial that as media practitioners, we don't fall into the clickbait trap, with our reporting. We know that this whole doom and gloom gets the view. We need to be, especially when, talking about climate stories, we need to be guided by science. I understand that one of the challenges for local journalists here reporting environmental stories is the access to data and, understanding the very technical and scientific terms and reports. So I think one solution is to collaborate and to work with scientists and researchers in our reporting. We need to go local and think more about climate justice when finding our stories, build trust and engagement that combat disinformation and misinformation.
Ms. Wen, you mentioned about media involving in the clickbait trap. Would you care to explain more on that?
With so much content that you see nowadays, you just scroll through your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, right? And people's attention span is getting shorter and shorter. So how do you try to engage audience? Sometimes you put, I'm sure everyone have come across this, you see some kind of headlines like, you tend to write the headlines in a way that you want people to click on your article, but then you read the article is totally different, or that's part of misinformation. And sometimes people don't even read the content or click on the link, they just reshare the headlines, and that's how misinformation spreads, because it starts with a very misleading or like just a very clickbaity headline. Yeah.
I see. So you're highlighting the point that some irresponsible journalists are creating misleading headlines just to get more views and just so that their news goes viral. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is not just limited to, I don't want to say
all media, basically.
Yeah.
Media
I mean, anybody, right?
Anybody, correct?
Right.
And you are suggesting that the media or journalists should collaborate with scientists and also researchers so that the whole story is based on scientific facts, correct?
Yes, because when it comes to reporting environmental stories, and you need to base it on the data, right? And some of this data is not easy to understand, especially, for people like us laymen, we have no background on understanding the reports. And, what you can do is, talk to the experts, ask them how to decipher the data, what does it mean, and that's how you kind of formulate your story.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Wen. Could you give us some of the examples of how you have used your work as a documentary filmmaker and journalist to support the climate action?
Okay. Well, in my work, I tend to do a lot of human stories. So even when talking about climate action or climate justice stories, I try to find a human angle to it because I believe that if you're going to talk about an issue, right, you need to tell people why it affects them, right? Because if you just tell them there's this issue, people might feel like, yeah, so what? It doesn't affect me, it doesn't affect anybody. So in my work, I also try to make it a point to report on issues from Sabah and Sarawak, which are underreported in our national mainstream media. So one example is that when Pulitzer Center had a call to pitch for stories about how reforestation efforts were impacted during the pandemic, I think one of the first thing I knew I wanted to do is to find a story in Kinabatangan, because that's where the massive deforestation had happened in Borneo. But I also wanted to find something unique in my story, not just any tree planting story. So I did my research. I spoke to contacts, NGOs, and I found an all-women tree planting team in Lower Kinabatangan, which is very rare. So if we don't mind, let's have a look at the video.
Kampung Sukau ini dari tahun dahulu memang peluang pekerja untuk wanita amatlah berkurang, terutamanya kepada ibu-ibu yang sudah berumah tangga. Jadi sekarang ini tertubuhnya unit reforestation ini dia membuka peluang kepada ibu-ibu lah.
Si Dr. Isabel yang cadang untuk ini reforestation tim perempuan. Di situ staf lain ada yang setuju, ada juga macam lucu. Sebab ini dia bilang kalau perempuan orang macam tidak excited bah, tidak trust itu perempuan buat itu kerja. Saya dalam hati saya mati lah ini kali pakai parang. Macam mana ini? Di situ pun saya macam takut sudah. Takut dimarah, itu kerja tidak siap, tapi oleh karena ingin ada kerja untuk membantu keluarga, terpaksa kerja saja. Apabila sudah kerja 13 hari begitu, kami punya pengarah pun pantau kami di lapangan. Dia ceritalah, macam mana kamu bikin ini? Ini kubilang kami punya selasing dan ini apa yang diarah sama kami, inilah kemampuan kami buat. Kami punya target pun ini tahun susah kami mau kerja sebab 2 kali pikir 3 bulan. Jadi kami punya kerja hanya boleh dikatakan 6 bulan. Dalam 6 bulan itu kami ada tanam juga. Dan di situ kami adjust dengan kami punya masa untuk maintenance. Sebab kadang-kadang kalau dia lilit macam begini, dia sampai boleh tarik ke bawah begini. Jadi itulah puncak dia terbantu pembesaran dia. Dan apabila tidak di maintenance itulah juga puncak kematian anak pokok.
sekarang hutan semakin menipis di kawasan Kinabatangan. Kebanyakan hutan terdapat di tebing sungai saja. Selebihnya kawasan darat itu dipenuhi sudah oleh kelapa sawit. Jadi itulah pentingnya kenapa kami perlu menanam anak pokok untuk melebatkan hutan itu dan juga untuk menambah makanan orang hutan agar tidak pupus lah.
Ini peluang di reforestation ini memang bagus. Sebab apa? Kebiasaan dari dulu, orang perempuan cuma suri rumah. Memang orang rasa bangga lah bahwa ini ada proyek yang reforestation. Boleh untuk ibu-ibu menambah pendapatan, kerja dan pengetahuan. Di situ kami macam rasa bangga lah. Kami seorang perempuan lagi pun sudah berumur, dapat menghasilkan itu penghutanan semula.
Semenjak dari tahun 2008 hingga sekarang, hasil yang kami dapat dari penanaman anak pokok, di situ saya merasa bangga sebab pokok itu telah digunakan pakai oleh hidupan liar. Inilah salah satunya khazanah yang kami jaga di sini. Jadi kalau boleh harapan saya dengan tim saya ini berpanjangan lah.
And we're back. Okay, thank you everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's directed and produced by Miss Wen. So basically this video is about the women tree planters of Sukau in Sabah. Personally, what I find interesting about this video, like Wen mentioned just now, she likes to approach the human angle. So she tells the story about how these people are surviving, the challenges that they face, and what unique is that the workers here are all women, correct? Yeah, they're all women. They started from, most of them are either housewives, and sometimes they also ask their daughters or sisters to join them as well. So what happened is that this lowland rainforest has been commercially logged and turned into the palm oil plantation, and because of that, it has threatened the wildlife, especially the orangutans and also the hornbills. Now, Ms. Wen, I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to talk about this this group, this community, this village per se? Like, what can you elaborate more on that?
Well, okay. So the how the story came about is because I was responding to a call to pitch, and this was specifically about reforestation during the pandemic, and everyone was affected during the pandemic. But we see a lot of I think we see a lot of stories about what happened, in the city in KL, right? But we don't really know how is it like in the jungle in Sabah. Sabah has one of the highest poverty rates in Malaysia, and like I said, I didn't want to just. Of course, there was a lot of conservation works that were affected, but I wanted to find something unique. And when I was doing my research, and I found this group of women, all women group, which I thought it was, this is something very different, because tree planting it's hard work. You see that they are planting on the sites of oil palm plantation. They are taking the boats, they are like walking into the jungle. It's all hard work. And also, beyond looking at conservation work, we look at their lives. Like what the profile says, it's true, as as women, living in a village, there's not a lot of opportunities for work. And because there is this NGO there doing conservation work, it provides them with some income, so that they can learn to be independent. And I mean, they even told me, working there, they learn about the all this. They can actually name all the plants and things like that. So for them, it's not just a job to be independent, but it's also to upskill themselves. So for me, these are all these little things that I try to add value to my story, instead of just reporting like, okay, conservation work is impacted during the pandemic. Yeah, everybody knows that everything was impacted. But
Yeah.
how do you add value to your story? Yeah.
No, because there are a lot of NGOs that conduct like tree planting. We even have one at Kuala Selangor Nature Park, right? They would invite volunteers to go there and plant mango trees. Basically, somewhat the same concept, but what makes that story different between this one, the one in Sabah at Sukau, is because I think mainly it's because they're all women and they do this kind of job that people assume like it's a man job, right? Because in order for them to plant first, they have to clear up the area, right? And they, if I'm not mistaken, they don't really have that much devices, technology especially. So they have been using machete.
Yeah, so they told me in the beginning they only have machetes. Can you imagine clearing the forest with a machete? Yeah, now
That
they
is
have
huge.
the like lawnmowers, but yeah, before that when they started, just machetes. Yeah, and smaller team, much smaller team, not such a big team. Yeah.
Yep.
And
And
also to note that, I think one thing I learned from them, it's not just about planting the tree, but also maintaining it. Because sure, you can plant it, but if you don't look after it, you don't nurture it, it could be the tree sapling, it's a baby tree, it could be, eaten by wildlife, it could be trampled on. So it is at least a 7-year process. Yeah.
yes, and this has been done like from generation to generations, right?
Well,
But
I think about
because
20 years they've been doing it.
20 years, yes. And I think it mentioned in the video that now they have more than 200,000 trees, if I'm not mistaken, right? Started by them. That is very inspiring, yes, indeed. Especially because they're all just women. So I applaud you for that, for managing to find these kind of stories. Besides research, do you have any contacts or connections that helped you find these people?
But I mean, throughout my work, my career, you meet different people, you build contacts, you build relationships. For me, every time I report or interview someone, it's not a one-off thing. You maintain that contact. So this is what I spoke about. Working or collaborating with scientists and researchers and NGOs, because they are the people on the ground in the field. They know exactly what's happening and what's like pressing, and these are the people that I keep in touch with. Yeah.
All right. So basically, it's really important to build relationships and connections with these people who are valuable as our sources for our stories, right? All right. So Miss Wen, in your experience, what are some of the effective strategies that media can employ in order to engage with the audiences and mobilize them towards climate action?
So earlier I mentioned about collaborating with scientists, researchers, and NGOs, but there's also, as media ourselves, we can also collaborate in our reporting among the newsrooms. I think yes, media, we tend to be like, you want the exclusive story, right? But certain stories, if media outlets can work together, the stories can reach a far more bigger audience in different demographics, because different media outlets have their own kind of pool of readers, and also each media have their own strength. For example, Maybe a print newsroom can work with a video team or a radio station, and I'm not just talking about local media, but think about going regional or even international. So if one good example of collaborative journalism that I can think of is the Panama Papers. To report on that scale, it had to be a team effort. It cannot be a single newsroom kind of breaking news. Of course, there are ways that you can negotiate, with the publication date. But I think one thing that we should start looking at is collaborative journalism.
All right, so to recap your point, it is highly crucial for us media to collaborate with other media as well, because different media outlets have their own strengths. And with that collaboration, we are able to reach out to a wider and larger audiences. Correct? All right. Okay, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now be taking a short 5-minute break. So we encourage you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this captivating montage. Also, for those who haven't registered, please do so using the link provided in the chat box. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for your participation for today's session. I would like to thank everyone for participating, especially to our seniors who joined this session today. Right, so we have covered some significant points based on our discussion with Ms. Wen just now. To recap, we've explored the role of media in collaborating with sources such as scientists and researchers to make sure that our stories is based on scientific facts. And we talk about how medias should collaborate among themselves in order to reach a wider and larger audiences to support the climate action. Now it's time to dive deeper into your questions. But before that, I would like to remind everyone to please type your questions in the chat box, and I'll do my best to address as many as possible. So let's continue with engaging questions. Right, so let's move on to the second round of key question, which is, how can the media organizations ensure inclusivity and diverse representation in their climate change reporting in order to amplify the voices of marginalized communities and promote environmental justice? Ms. Wynn, your thoughts?
So when it comes to reporting about marginalized communities, I think one good practice that we can apply as media practitioners is to ensure that we give the space for the locals to tell their own stories in their own voices, and also to recognize their local culture and languages. Say some industries are very male-dominated, right? So when we are looking for an expert in certain field, we could try to find out if there's a female expert in that field as well, so that we give some representation to gender minorities. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, to recap, what we have to do is to first get to know their culture of the marginalized group, and we need to give them space for them to actually tell their own stories, as because some people from different regions, the communities are quite dominated either by the authorities. So we as media, we should give them the chance or the platform to tell their story to others, so people would help and understand them better. Right, so you have done that as well, right? You have been talking about the communities in Sabah and Sarawak, basically the marginalized group, to give more representation. What about other communities besides Sabah and Sarawak?
When I talk about giving them the space for their own voice, right? I mean, it comes down to even little things like the language. I mean, so in say my forte is the video. So when it comes to video work, instead of having my narration, go over their visuals, let them speak on their own. Like that is giving them their own voice. And the title of the title of the video, I included their local language, that's
Yes,
language.
I noticed.
And even let them speak in Bahasa. I mean, one of them can speak English, but I was like, let's speak in Bahasa, like something that you want to speak in. It's little things like that. Sorry, and your question is how have I applied it to my other work? I would say it's the same thing. That you give, it's all these are storytelling techniques, right? You really give them their own voice. Don't talk for them. Yeah.
What about other communities besides Sabah and Sarawak? What about the other marginalized communities? How would you give their voices as well?
Well, it's the same. I mean, the moment I decide that I'm gonna report on certain issues, certain stories, you go in, find out what's the issue, let them. This is all storytelling technique that you are using, really letting them speak on screen for themselves. Don't put like a text over it. Don't use your own narration. Don't go and dub it into English because it's for like certain media. I mean, you always can put subtitles, but just let them speak their own language. Yeah.
Because it would seem more original and authentic when it
And
comes
also-
from them as well.
Yes, and also something that they're comfortable with. I mean, why are you putting a narration or a caption over them when they can speak for themselves, right?
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So let's move on with the next question. Ms. Wen, are there any innovative storytelling techniques or approaches that you have utilized in your documentary work to effectively communicate the urgency of climate action to the Malaysian audiences?
Depending on the available resources, of course, there's also a limitation to what as a media practitioner I can do. But I always try to think about how to present my story in different formats, such as feature story, photo essay, video, or multimedia sites, because some stories are better told in certain form, and different audiences resonate with differently with each. As someone with a film background, I believe that visuals are a very powerful storytelling tool. It helps the audience to see and connect with the characters and subject, especially for something like climate stories, right? When we talk about the damage to environment, having aerial photography will help the audience see the extent of destruction or changes to a certain landscape or area. So I want to share another work that I've done in Pitas. It's a small district north of Sabah. It's about local villagers defending their mangrove forests. So that's another reason why I chose to report this story, is because there's a lot of media attention on rainforests, right? But not a lot on mangroves. Which mangroves are, I don't know how many people know this. Mangroves are very effective in absorbing carbon, especially in this climate crisis.
And it helps with flood as well, right?
Yes, with flood, coastal erosion, and there was studies done. I mean, if you remember the 2004? The tsunami? Yeah. I mean, there was significant loss of life, right? But there was scientific studies that showed, right, if there weren't mangrove forests, right, the loss of lives will be even more tragic. So, mangroves are very important, but not a lot of people know about that. So yeah, I chose to report on mangroves because like I said, every different story I do, I try to find an added value to it. So with this story, the mangrove forests were cleared to build the largest commercial aquaculture farm in Malaysia about more than 10 years ago. And so now 10 years later, we see how this mega project has impacted the lives of the local community. So maybe we go to the video.
Yep, sure.
Nama saya Mas Tupang bin Semoy. Cerita daripada nenek moyang kami tinggal di sini adalah 11 generasi. Suku kaum Tembonoi ini, kehidupan kami adalah sangat berkait rapat dengan paya bakau. Kami sebagai orang kampung, kami tidak akan menolak 100% sekiranya pembangunan itu boleh membantu dan boleh mengubah kehidupan penduduk kampung. Apabila kawasan itu sudah diteroka, sudah dimusnahkan, maka sumber yang sedia ada di situ sudah pasti satu memang pupus. Kedua, orang kampung yang sudah menjaga generasi ke generasi di situ memang sudah tidak ada hak di situ. Selepas syarikat sudah beroperasi, maka kita terasa sangatlah. Sama ada udangnya, siputnya, dia sudah terlihat tempat mencari. Kedua, sungainya, airnya sudah tercemar. Dan semua sumber, udang, ketam, dan juga ikan semua sudah hampir pupus. Sisa kumpahan, baja, ataupun kimia-kimia yang ada dalam kolam itu, dia terus masukkan ke dalam sungai. Orang kampung tidak ada pengalaman untuk membantah proyek kerajaan ini. Bukan proyek yang kecil tetapi adalah proyek yang terbesar di Malaysia. Kawasan yang sudah dimusnahkan oleh syarikat itu memang ada yang tidak dapat ditanam. Memandangkan kawasan itu sudah dikorek begitu dalam dan ditakungi air begitu dalam. Walaupun kita akan tanam, tetapi bakau tumbuhan sekalipun tidak akan hidup sebab dia tenggelam. Jadi hasilnya sekarang dia menjadi payah. Kita ini sebagai orang kampung yang sangat terhad keupayaan kita. Kalau kita orang kaya, mungkin kita segalanya kita akan buat yang terbaik. Tetapi apa yang kami lakukan secara pelan-pelan untuk memelihara kawasan itu, kami tidak akan berputus asa. Kami punya harapan adalah pihak kerajaan ataupun pihak-pihak tertentu memberi pengiktirafan kepada komuniti. Jadi tidaklah seharusnya dimusnahkan ataupun diambil lagi oleh syarikat, tetapi sisakanlah kepada penduduk kampung, 6 buah kampung ini untuk diwarisi dari sekarang sehingga generasi yang akan datang. Kalau bakau sudah tidak ada tempat mencari sumber, adat budaya kami yang mencari sumber di kawasan Paya Bakau sekaligus hilang.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Wen, for the video. So I have a few comments regarding that video. I noticed some similarities between the first video and the second video, which is that the local communities, after the destruction, after the pollution and everything, they had their own initiative to replant the trees or to sustain back their place. Basically, they did it on their own without any help and support or funds by the government and so on. So this video is about the 1.23 billion commercial shrimp farm project that has been held in Pita, Sabah. But unfortunately, this project had a lot of consequences, especially to the locals. It polluted the river there, and also it had caused a lot of extinction between the the animals there, such as prawn, fish. Basically, their food resources became limited ever since. So, Ms. Wen, would you care to elaborate more about the video?
Sorry, what do you want to know about the video?
I mean, what approach or what elements did you focus on in the storytelling technique? Like what? Yeah.
Okay, just to clarify, with the tree planters, they are from an organization called Hutan. So other than reforestation, they also have different programs with like orangutan, wildlife, things like that. So they do have like researchers and scientists for that NGO. But for this Pita's mangrove story, it's mostly the villagers themselves. They have like a kind of like an action group called the G6, which consists of 6 surrounding villages which are affected by the shrimp farm. Okay, so how do I approach this story? So specifically, this story is funded by Police Center again, and the theme was about deforestation. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of focus on rainforests, right? And every time I decide on pitching a story, I always try to do something different. This is also part of myself, wanting to grow and learn about more things. So I decided, I looked around online, I researched a little bit. There was not a lot of reports on mangroves, but as we mentioned earlier, it's very important. So then I knew that I wanted to report on mangroves, and from there I started talking to people. I started talking to the experts in Peninsula. I even consulted a good friend of mine at Makaranga, Yao Hua. He's a scientist and he's also an environmental journalist. And yeah, and I found this story of Pitas. There was some reports on it over the years, but not a lot. But mostly all just text-based print stories. And I thought, since it's the biggest shrimp park in Malaysia, I wanted to look at that because we have a lot of mega structures, right? Or mega projects, but then what happens after that? So yeah, I went in knowing that I wanted to report about mangroves, and then from there, I tried to find out what story is suitable. I spoke to a few different NGOs, and before I decided on pursuing this Pita story. And also, we talk about collaborative reporting. So I have a reporting partner who was granted who got the grant with me, Emily. So she is more of a print text-based and also photojournalist. So she also did reporting along Kinabatangan. So for us, we are reporting on mangroves, but one person is I was doing video and photo essay, and then she was doing feature stories and also her own photo essays. So that's one way that you could kind of like collaborate, report on this. Doesn't necessarily need to be the same exact story, but the same theme, and we publish in different media outlets. Yeah.
Okay, talking about different media outlets, right? You mentioned that some stories are more suitable to publish in certain platforms, like some might be suitable as videos, some might be suitable as a feature story, right? So how do we know, or how to ensure which content is suitable for which platform?
I mean, so this is like pitching, right? Well, of course, you need to look at the media outlet, you need to look at what do they publish, and from there, you know that whether you should pitch to them. And of course, when you pitch, the editor will speak to you as well, and they can decide whether, this is what, this is their something like a strong suit for them. Yeah.
Would you agree that in order to choose which platform suits best for which content, we need to consider the factors about the audiences? Like for instance, if you want to publish something in social media, because we know that social media is flooded by the younger generations, so things like videos and so on would suit best to publish there. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, of course, the videos goes on social media. But having said that, things goes on TV as well. So it's about finding the right people to report on, and also finding the right people to as a freelance journalist, finding the right people to publish with you, right? Because you want to make sure that your reporting is fair and balanced. You do justice to the story and to the people that we are reporting on, right?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wen, for sharing those valuable insights. As we conclude our discussion, what advice would you give to the aspiring journalists or documentary filmmakers in Malaysia who are passionate about covering climate change and supporting climate action through their work?
Well, I would say always be curious and be hungry to find stories, and also be adaptable. So for the Pita's mangrove story, I had actually traveled to Sabah solely to just film that story. But when I was there, an editor friend of mine asked me if I could look at the recent issue with sand mining in Kudat, if you want to share the website. So understandably, we have limited resources to travel to East Malaysia and to do in-person reporting, especially for freelance journalists. But this was a trending topic at that time. So since I was already there and I had my equipment with me, so I just just made a small detour to Kudat to meet the villagers. And I think, as you can see, I think at that point in time, there wasn't really any aerial view of the project site until my article was published. So the drone photos really helped to put things in context for the audience and even the villagers themselves, because they've not really seen this perspective of a massive project behind their backyard. And I think this project is one of the biggest sand mining project in Malaysia at this moment of time. Yeah.
So basically, it's really important to have the right tools and the right sources, and future journalists should also be very curious, always want to know more about something. Like for instance, like when you mentioned about there's a big project, one of the biggest project in Malaysia. So you were curious about what happens next after that. What are some of the untold stories that happens underneath it, underlying it? So journalists should always be curious because climate change is a topic that people don't want to talk much about it because, like Wen mentioned just now, in order to make people care about a story, we need to tell how does this particular subject affects them, right? So, which is why when according to Wen, she tries to find a human angle for every story, so people would care more. Right. All right. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ms. Wen, for actively participating in today's talk on how the media can support climate action. We have had an insightful conversation with our guest, Ms. Wen, as a Malaysian documentary filmmaker and journalist. Now it's time to turn the floor over to you, our audiences, for the Q&A session. So please raise your hand or type your questions in the chat and I'll be happy to call upon you. Also, remember to keep your question concise and focus on the topic at hand. Right, so there are a few questions here in the chat box. Let's start from the first one. Okay, so the first question from Farhan Hakimi. I have a question for Ms. Wen. In your opinion, how can the media in Malaysia play a significant role in raising awareness and mobilizing action on climate change among the local population? The question is quite similar with what Ms. Wen have mentioned just now. So I think we'll just skip to the second question, which is from Nurul Haifa. I wonder if there are any specific challenges or obstacles that you have encountered in reporting climate change issues in Malaysia, and how have you navigated them? So Ms. Wen?
Well, depending on the story, so of course, if you're reporting about certain corporations destroying or damaging the area, there is a safety risk to it. So those need to be accessed before I go on ground to report. But in terms of other challenges, pressing challenge I would say is the access to data, right? Because you need to report your stories based on facts, and how do you report it when you don't have the facts, correct? So obtaining data reports, it's difficult in Malaysia. And even if you obtain it, might not be updated, and it's too technical to understand. So this is the point where I mentioned about, working with scientists, experts, researchers, people who can understand and kind of, tell you, translate into layman terms for you so that you can tell it in layman terms for the readers. Yeah.
So when you talk about, getting the access, right? So in order to go to certain areas, sometimes certain areas are restricted. So what are the steps or procedure for in order to get the access to these places?
I mean, if it's restricted, then you cannot go in.
Oh, so I mean, do you have to go to the local authorities and ask for permission and so on, make a letter request and so on? Or
we try to stay on public land.
Public land, I see.
Yeah.
So if it's restricted, you guys would just ignore lah. Okay.
Don't try to break the law in your reporting.
Okay. All right. So and then you mentioned about data, right? The data are not updated and so on. So how do you encounter that? Do you do your own research, or how do you encounter when you have limited data?
There's a lot of ways to get there's some other ways you can get data as well. But it's a lot of work. You talk to the locals and you have to try, but you have to talk to enough locals to have a big sample. So I mean, so if you're working alone, it's very difficult, right? So this is where I mentioned that, collaboration. Sometimes NGOs, they might have certain data. Yeah. Maybe not the full complete set, but they might have something. Yeah.
Okay, so basically we need to collaborate more in order to get more access, because obviously we cannot work alone, and sometimes talking to the locals might not necessarily help. That it helps, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So we need to find external sources for that by collaborating.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's proceed with the next question by Dia. Hi, Ms. Wen. Could you analyze either it is good if we use social media platforms in creating climate change awareness? Thank you in advance.
Well, what do you guys think?
If you ask me personally, I would say it depends. What about you?
Well, obviously, social media, there's good and bad, right? It depends on how you use it. But then that's where the audience is. I think it's thinking about how are you going to cut through all the information dumping on social media to get your content, your factual content to the audience, right? But I definitely think that social media is good. If especially now, we had this discussion earlier talking about different generation using different platforms. With TikTok, things go viral so fast, right? Because of how the
Correct.
algorithm is. So it is good, but it's about how you use it and what information you put out there. Yeah.
Then what are your thoughts about citizen journalism? Stories that are created by non-journalists, but they post things on social media. What are your thoughts on that?
It's very important, I think, because they are the people living in that area, so they know the area best. They see what's happening on ground all the time. So if organizations or can provide them with training, because sometimes to report on the stories, they might need some training, maybe basic video, photo skills, collecting data. When I talk about data as evidence, say if you are alleging that there are some wrongdoings in the area, how do you collect the data to say that this happened on this date, it's factual, it's evidence that we can use, right? Because sometimes people think that I took a picture, so that's the evidence, but it's not that we don't trust them, but
Insufficient.
how do you make sure that your evidence is solid, that this is something that can be published and reported on, right?
Yeah, because
yeah.
because we have fake news everywhere, and sometimes people are just create these kind of things. And with the advancements of technology such as AI, I think the other day there has been it's caused by AI. It's a fake news basically about some kind of like a disaster happening, but it's not true basically. So when you say that citizen journalism is very important because they know what they are facing at the moment, but some people find it very risky and unreliable because they don't have journalism background and because we don't know what are their true intentions. Because it can either be some fake news just to get more publicity and so on. So based on what you mentioned, we need to provide them trainings, right? For them to post things in a way that it is more credible. But without any journalism background, do you think people, the audience would still trust them without having any journalism background or science background to report on an environmental issue?
Okay, so I mean, I'm not saying that they create fake news, but they need to be empowered on how to report in a way that people cannot dispute what they're reporting. Because I believe most of the time what they report will be true because they are the ones most affected by what's ever happening in their own area or background, but they just need to be equipped with the proper tools so that people cannot dispute what they are reporting, right? And there are groups working with locals to provide them basic skills and fact-checking mechanism, right?
And when they publish it, do they publish it under a certain organization or do they publish it as their own?
Yeah, well, I've seen. I mean, they can do both. I've seen some media outlets supporting citizen journalists, and I'm not aware if anyone have published on their own platform. But this is about being. I mean, if your reporting is credible, right, and you have fact checked everything, I think nobody can dispute, even if you publish on your own platform, right?
True. Thank you, Ms. Wen. Right, so next question from Arif Daniel. Hello, can you share any upcoming or ongoing projects or collaborations that you are involved in that aim to address climate change and promote sustainability in Malaysia through the media?
Well, I am doing a marine story. Yeah, this is a TV documentary, and it will be out in September.
I see.
It talks about the marine ecosystem, which is another thing that because we focus so much on the land that we live in, right? But we don't think about the ocean, and you just throw everything inside the ocean.
Okay, so that is like another sector that you are now focusing on.
Yes, I'm working with a production house for this. So this is a TV documentary. Yeah.
Who are you collaborating with? Like, are we allowed to know that? For the time being?
It's an international channel. Yeah.
International channel. I see. All right. Okay. Question from Putri Sherry Hamiza. Good morning, Ms. Wen. How can we as a university student help promote the importance of sustainability and issues concerning climate change? So this question is focusing on university students. Right.
Well, I mean, go out there. So a lot of you are journalism students, right? I mean, think about a career in environmental journalism. Start reporting or creating content. Talk to your friends. Talk to older generations. Educate yourself. Educate others around you about these issues. And I mean, you are the best at understanding how TikTok works.
So we should utilize that platform
utilize your
much
knowledge
as we
and
can.
the platform. Yeah, with good content, good credible content.
Okay. Right. So question from Najiha Raza. How do you see the future of climate change reporting in Malaysia? And what steps do you believe the media should take to ensure continuous and impactful coverage on this issue?
Well, I've seen some journalists who are reporting a lot on environmental stories, but I think we need more of this kind of journalists. So hopefully you are the next batch of next generation of journalists. I hope that there are some of you who are inspired, to take up this beat and this issue. Yeah.
So, in other words, you are very hopeful with the future generation, the future journalists.
Yes, I hope that more young people, take up this cause, because this is, we only have one planet.
Correct.
There's no planet B.
That we should take care of.
Yes, and this is something that would affect the younger generation more. Yeah.
Yep. The future kids who are still growing.
Yeah.
Right.
I might not be here, but you guys are still here. So that's what we did.
Question from Wahida Ramlan. How can the media effectively communicate these interconnected challenges?
Yeah, sorry. Wait, so
how can the media effectively communicate these interconnected challenges?
Oh, wait, I think she has a question before that.
It's almost the same, right? Okay, we can skip to the next question also from Wahida. How do you see the relationship between climate change and other pressing issues in Malaysia, such as social justice, environmental degradation, or economic development?
Okay. Well, all these are interconnected, because when climate change stories are connected to human rights. Because if you look at the PETA story, right, they have deforestation, they have, cleared up that area. And who are affected? The locals, right?
The native
In terms of
state.
their livelihood, and then also the environmental
Food
environment is
source.
affected. Yeah. The villagers lost their source of food, source of income. So I think to answer you, when you talk about climate change, there's a lot of other human issues around it. So this is the reason why I try to find the human angle to it. Yeah.
So if let's say if I were to be an environmental journalist and I want people to engage more in environmental issues, I should talk about the social injustice that is happening in the local communities, and especially in the marginalized communities, because in that way, because when you put social injustice, people are, they are drawn towards it, like, oh, social injustice, what's happening, and so on, rather than put climate change, because it's kind of, okay, climate change, so what? Because we can't see the literal effects and consequences after that. So would you agree with that?
So when we talk about, I think the climate education is still quite lacking in Malaysia.
Climate education, okay.
Yeah, people don't really know. We all know this big word, climate change, right? But what does it mean? And how does it affect us, right? Especially if you live in a city, you don't feel it that much. Maybe now you say, okay, it's a very hot, hot weather streak, right? But let's say if you're living like coastal communities, coastal erosions, right? They feel it. It happens to them, like rising sea levels. The floods come in more often. While the big picture is still about climate crisis, you need to think deeper about what is happening to the people in those communities, right? Because you think you live in the city, it doesn't affect you, but it does. When say, let's talk about marine. When sea temperature rise, there's coral bleaching, and with coral bleaching, the coral reefs are where a lot of these high commercial value fishes are, right? So with coral bleaching, things like that, or with overfishing, your supply of fish will go down, and then we don't get protein. This is a source of protein, cheap protein for us. So there's a lot of this whole relationship that people do not see. So how do you think about when you report your stories? Think about the climate justice angle as well. Yeah.
And something that would relate to them as well, such as loss of protein, food,
Yes.
and so on, because only then people will start to care, because
Yeah,
food is very
that's how.
important.
Yeah, that's how I formulate, because someone living in a city will be like, yeah, so it's the
It's not
fishing-
affecting us.
Yeah,
and so
it's
on.
the coastal community's house which got flooded. It's not my house, But
Yeah.
when you talk about your food supply will be impacted, then maybe they start thinking, okay, it's all
We should
related.
do something.
It's all
Okay.
related. You can't just say because you are not in that area, you are not affected by it. We are all affected by this climate crisis. Yeah.
It's just either it's affecting you directly or indirectly.
In one way or another. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So question from Shaida to Anisha. Ms. Wen, how can media organization in Malaysia promote environmental literacy and education among the public, especially the younger generation?
Well, report on the stories, create content. Yeah. Factual content.
Yeah, it's based on the previous question, you mentioned that our country is quite left behind when it comes to climate change education or environmental education, right? So who do you think is responsible in ensuring that the Malaysian citizens is well educated in terms of climate?
I mean, you can't really say like a certain person is
Oh yeah,
responsible for
maybe
it.
not, of course not
Yeah,
one body,
yeah,
a few.
I think it's everything is a collaborative effort, from the government to the stakeholders, media. Media as watchdog, we have a responsibility, educators. So one thing I learned is that, things like all this and anything to do with like this climate education, a lot of things are like in English terms, right? And how do you, I know there's an NGO who has been working to kind of like translate these terms to Bahasa so that the local communities, they can understand it,
Yep.
right? So you see there's a lot of gaps, but there are a lot of there are people working behind the scenes to educate the public. And I think maybe in the past few years, and with the younger generation like yourself, there have been more awareness. So I am hopeful in terms of that. Yeah.
So you mentioned the ones doing the translation to translate into the Bahasa are done by NGOs, right?
NGOs, yeah.
NGOs mostly. Okay. Right. So question from Umi Najiha. Miss Wen, are there any success stories on mangrove restoration?
As far as I know, yes. Yes. In Sabah and also in Peninsula over here. Yeah. My knowledge is quite limited in Sarawak, so yeah. Yeah.
Right. Do you have any plans to go to Sarawak after this for any projects?
I hope so.
You hope so. Okay.
Yeah, of course I hope so. Yeah.
Does that depend on you, or do you like need to find a story first and then only then you go there?
Yeah, it depends on the funding. Yeah.
Funding. I
Also,
see.
pitching if there's any media outlets who want a story over there. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, we always have stories, but you need a place to publish it, right? To reach
Yeah,
the audience. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Right. To the audiences, we have time for more questions. So if you have, please do place your questions on the chat box. Right. So if there isn't any more questions, the colloquium would like to express our gratitude to Miss Wen for sharing her expertise and valuable insights with us today. Thank you all to the audiences for the very thought-provoking questions. Together with through the power of media, we are able to make a difference in addressing the issues regarding climate change. Now, before I conclude, I encourage everyone to continue the conversation on social media using our event hashtag, #colloquium47, #environmental journalism, #GoGreen, #MassComUITM. Let's keep the momentum going and drive further engagement on climate action. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears that we have come to the end of our session. But before that, I would like to thank you once again, Ms. Wen, for your thoughtful insights today. It has been an honor to have you here as our guest. And your dedication in using media as a catalyst, especially in videos and films, for change in the environment is truly commendable. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to Ms. Wen.
Thank you for having me.
And that concludes our discussion for today's colloquium. Thank you all for joining us and for your active participation. Remember that each one of us has an important role to play in supporting the climate actions. Now, before we disperse, I would like to invite everyone to turn on their cameras for a group photo. So everyone, if you may please turn on your cameras. Those who haven't switched on their cameras, please do so we can do the group photo session. Right, so is everyone ready? 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, one more time. Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, done. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Right, okay, so with the photo session done, we have officially arrived at the end of our discussion with our panelists. However, for the audience and participants, don't forget to fill out the feedback form and check out our social media at Colloquium 47. Also, if you enjoyed this session, I have great news for all of you. I would like to remind you all about our upcoming events that is happening on the 17th of June from 8:30 a.m. to 12:50 p.m. This time, our e-Colloquium shall discuss on the environmental issues and roles of NGOs by Dr. Renard Siu and Yang Berbahagia Datuk TPR Sukimi. See you all next time. Bye-bye. Thank you and stay safe.